The Department of Environmental Affairs has granted the controversial Karpowership permission to moor one of its 450-megawatt gas-fired power plants in Richards Bay. Karpowership won about 60% of a government tender to supply 2,000 megawatts of electricity in March of 2021. Now, the Turkish floating power plant operator has also applied to install 2 additional projects in the ports of Ngora in the Eastern Cape and Saldanha in the Western Cape. Now, for reaction on this, I'm joined by Desmond from the South Durban community, as well as Environment Alliance, and Professor Patrick Bond from the University of the Western Cape School of Government. Gentlemen, good afternoon to you both. Thank you so much for your time. Perhaps, Desmond, let's start with you, just to get your reaction, as your organization has been lobbying for the environmental protection of vulnerable communities in KZN. Are you shocked at all by the decision taken by the minister?
Well, I don't think we're shocked, but if you just take a walk back, the minister from the outset of this project was concerned about the expense that was going to place the burden on the government, but also tie the government up into a 20-year project. In addition to that, it wouldn't have provided cheap, affordable access to energy for poor people in the Zululand region. We're shocked with that decision, that the minister has actually walked back on that decision, because from her analysis from the beginning, the reason that this project took so long to get off the ground was that government was hell-bent, that all the facts placed at the table, where they knew the impact that the Karpowership will have on not only on livelihoods, but also the marine resources, and also big energy guzzlers in Richards Bay. I met with somebody on Monday, and they do not want to have any Karpowership that's going to enrich and ensure that the capital moves out of this country. So there's no benefit, and this has been a problem. But I'm shocked with Barbara Creecy as a minister, who was from the outset saying no to Karpowership. We don't need these big energy ships here in South Africa. We could move to clean energy overnight, and the resources are there. We could build and develop alternative energy that's affordable, that's easily accessible, and it won't. And the fiscus in South Africa will be in a situation where the money, the flight of capital is not going out the country, rather than the money that's going to be here in the country will not only keep the resources and also provide the energy and jobs for people in the country. So that is the case, and I'm shocked that Barbara Creecy went back on her word and actually provided the decision that came out today. Yeah. But that's not the end of the world. The people, that we talk to, that we are busy in Richards Bay, big corporations are not going to use Karpowership. They move into their own alternative energy. They have ideas that energy doesn't need to harm the environment and harm people. So that's the good news. I think it's one of the big corporations I would be worried about that's been pushing for this behind closed doors would be South 32 BHP Bulletin. There's been a professional preference with the cost of energy in that area. And because they export a lot of their products, I would think they would be one of those that wants to move to this so that they can get credits from the European Union and the different governments. The carbon taxes. So it's all about pleasing some companies at the expense of people. I know that we had a meeting yesterday in Richards Bay, and I can tell you now that people are not aware of it. There's hardly been any consultation. This Karpowership has been bullied through to get it done by the politicians in the area and to get it signed off so that they can benefit out of it. This is all about somebody benefit out of it. What Barbara Creecy initially said, that is too high, it's too costly, the country cannot afford it. But suddenly the contracts have been signed. So something definitely changed hands. And we know, like every other development in this country, we at the highest when corruption and things go through, where people are affected the most.
Yeah. Let's perhaps bring in Professor Bond, Mr. Dessar. Professor Bond, too costly, the country cannot afford it, but then we're seeing some movement with the latest development, which has been a drawn-out approval process that has faced many delays. What's your take on what's happened?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm, by the way, University of Johannesburg Center for Social Change. I was at UWC. Great place. But the main thing is that everything Des says is blinded to these corporates now, particularly that the climate implications, where methane gas is the fuel for the car power ships. And the methane gas is 85 times more potent than CO2 over a 20-year period. When there's leakage, and that happens all the time. I mean, we've seen here in Johannesburg, our methane gas pipes exploding. And so we don't really trust that there will be clean use of this fossil fuel. And secondly, we would be getting it from Mozambique. That's the closest source of the big methane gas. That's what we call blood methane, and that's because there's a war. Unfortunately, the South African National Defence Force has 1,200 of its troops at risk there. Several have died. And it's really to defend one company at the present time, which is Total Energies from Paris, and another coming through ExxonMobil in partnership with China National Petroleum. Now, that's the dilemma, isn't it? Should we continue to rely on multinational corporates, including a Turkish firm, Cardinese, which will charge an enormous amount per kilowatt hour, and then not even leave the capital investment behind it? It'll just sail off. Or should we put all of that money, and there's talk of a 220 billion rand contract over 20 years. So maybe it'll only be 5 years, but a very expensive contract, as Des says, into solar and wind, and to clean storage systems like pumped storage or molten salt. That's what we're faced with. And, you know, Barbara Creasy is going off to the Conference of the Parties 28 of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in about a month. And she's, I think, going to be quite embarrassed that South Africa is meant to be decarbonizing, but now we're moving from a coal addiction to a meth addiction, methane gas, and that's everyone's going to comment on. And maybe we'll lose not only the Just Energy Transition Partnership, because we're supposed to use that money to have renewables, and secondly, we're going to get sanctions, climate sanctions on our exports, because whatever goes out of the country is produced with energy from Eskom, and they're proposing also a 3,000 megawatt coal-fired or gas-fired power plant, and the World Bank and Transnet are proposing a massive LNG, liquefied natural gas terminal. So we're really looking at a problem of these current managers and politicians shooting our economy in the foot, because we'll be attracting sanctions as a result.
Yeah, quite concerning. Mr. Dessar, there are also a number of concerns from the community which range from the immediate impact to the ocean, but perhaps explain the serious concerns NGOs and civil society groups which have, the concerns that they have with this very project.
Well, you know, in workshopping and talking to communities the last couple of weeks, we've been there since 2022. We have a permanent office in Richards Bay. And it's shocking that the communities are worried about the risk. They've had a lot of fires in Richards Bay just last weekend. Massive fire that they said they contained, but they couldn't contain it. It burned for 7 days. In fact, when I went up there twice and we drove through, the fire was still burning. The Fosker company that's just near there, opposite the school, has exploded so many times and affected the school across the road. And so that's one of the major things, the risk. And like Patrick says, you know, the pipelines are blowing up in Richards Bay. Well, yeah, in Durban, the methane gas pipeline killed three contractors in the Durban harbor. And when the Navy sailors jumped in to save them, they died too. So we had 6 people that died. And gas methane when the school was closed during the December period, 2015, the Tongaat school, the kids were on leave, and the pipeline was under the school, erupted and blew up the ground. The soccer field was blown up. Imagine if the kids were there. They'd all be dead. So it's happening in a vacuum where there's a number of incidents occurring. There is no MHI done. In other words, massive hazardous installations being done, or any risk assessment being done on the Karpowership. That is a huge concern for communities out there. Methane gas and any other gas for that matter, when it erupts and goes into there, you don't smell it. So you won't know about it. Only when you breathe it in, it starts choking you, and then starts getting to your organs and your lungs, and all that starts collapsing. So it's not a gas that you can smell like any other gas, like your hydrogen sulfide or your sulfur dioxide, which is a rotten egg smell. Those gases you can actually smell. But with the methane gas, you can't smell it all. And that is the biggest risk in it. And you're going to place all these pipelines right next to poor black communities in those areas. And they will suffer the most. And at the moment, those communities don't have access to any energy, any electricity. And if they do in some cases, they pay about 12 times more than the big corporations that want the gas and want the energy, such as BHP Billiton, who uses 77% of that energy. So if you weigh it up by scale, people are not going to have access to the gas. And the big energy users that want to have preferential trade agreements with the Europeans want that gas because they don't want to be penalized. And the profits are going to the Australian, London Stock Exchange, the Australian Stock Exchange, or the New York Stock Exchange, and benefit those countries. So once again, we in South Africa have all the resources, and we pay the price. And we're going to pay the price like we're paying for Medupi and Kusile. The same thing's going to happen with the Karpowership, and it won't benefit the majority of poor people in this country and in Richards Bay, where I'm currently have an office there, where I work there at least about 10 times a month. My concern is not only that people are not going to have affordability, but the cost of electricity in that area is going to go up with Karpowership. That means that people are going to get more disconnections than they previously had. So Karpowership is not our savior. In fact, it's going to be a curse for the people of this country and the people in Richards Bay.
Professor Bond, let's speak a little bit. I mean, you spoke in quite a bit of depth around liquid natural gas and where this gas is likely to be procured from. And speaking ahead of the climate change summit that Minister Barbara Creecy is going to be attending, and you speak about the embarrassment that she will have to face. With that said, and the losses, of course, that South Africa will endure as a country around the Just Energy Partnership, those implications, where does this now place South Africa on its messaging around the fight against climate change?
Well, it's talk green and walk dirty. I mean, it's a classic problem where you've got a minerals energy complex. That's the term we academics use for the power structure in the society. You know, we have a president who was a coal mining tycoon and an energy minister who's a climate denialist who thinks that maybe Desmond or CIA agents. I think he's sort of been hinting that he thinks there's some sort of underhand plot by environmentalists. But we care about the society, the environment, the future generations. And I would still insist, Barbara Creecy yesterday at her briefing on the COP28 was very clear that she's very worried about these sanctions. Now, although the sanctions don't yet have methane gas as one of the criteria, they certainly will, because it's a top priority for the world to cut back on the LNG, the liquefied natural gas from methane, because it's so much more potent than CO2. And so that means what I think this group of let me call it National Business Initiative, which has been promoting methane, several universities like Stellenbosch, my competitors, and a big chunk of the Presidential Climate Commission, except for civil society, really. They are basically looking at a meth addiction, methane. And what Barbara Creecy is going to be hearing, I'm pretty sure, is that the CBAM, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, will hit us hard. And the crucial way we could avoid being hit is to have a high enough carbon tax so that the massive emissions, we're third highest in the world per person per unit of output. Our economy is so addicted to carbon right now. And what that means, when we're only charging in US dollar terms 30 cents, and the European Union is now at about $95 per ton as a penalty, well, that means when our products go to the European Union, and actually earlier this month, the counting process started, 26, the penalties, the tariffs will be imposed. we're going to be losing a big chunk of our industry. Some say up to 40% of steel, of aluminium, of manganese, of smelted metals, of automobiles, of petrochemicals, even some of the residuals that are using the very high greenhouse gas energy, even, as Barbara Creasy admitted, forest products and agricultural products that we export. So these folks, I think, have been so short-sighted, serving the interests of the fossil industries, that they're really going to wreck it for not only our future generations, my kids, who will have a burned planet, but also our economy.
And very quickly, before we let you go, gentlemen, Mr. De Sar, of course we know that the department had spoken about an appeals process, saying that there's an environmental authorization decision which gives any person a chance to lodge an appeal against the decision within the specified period. With the latest news now, the department granting the controversial Karpowership permission to moor one of its gas-fired power plants in Richards Bay, where does this now place the voice of NGOs, and what happens next?
Well, thanks for that. And let me just say from the outset, we spent months on end making submissions to the department and the ministry. They have not, up until now, they have not even come back to us to inform us of their decision. So nothing has come back to us. I must say that we are trying to scramble now that this decision is made. We are talking to our partners. We're also talking to a legal team that we believe certainly that where we are going. But we're looking at the decision that was made, and we believe that decision needs to be appealed. We cannot allow a precedent to be set where 90% of the population in this country is going to be affected with something that's not going to benefit them. So in whose name is it going to be beneficial? It's not going to be for the local population, Richards Bay and surrounding communities. It's going to be the big energy user, as I said, PHP Billiton. So we will certainly, based on our consultation on the 31st, we have a big peak. We are going to have meetings all over the show in those areas. We'll also picket, and we are going to come out straight, because communities are already been saying, we need to do something about it. So I think after the consultation, we are looking at how do we appeal the process and how far we take it. Obviously, the communities must be informed, and they must say, well, go ahead with the appeal, and what we can do about it and what action. But certainly on Tuesday, huge actions in all the areas around Karpowership to say no to Karpowership, no to corruption, and no to Barbara Creasy's decision, because something must have gone wrong. And I'm sure she must be examining herself to say, what did I do wrong? What will she say to the whole world now? What will she be able to say? That she's allowed a huge Karpowership to be in all our harbors, yes. But on top of that methane gas will be the emissions that's going to be emitted that will lead to the crisis of the climate not being addressed, but more importantly, that the crisis of the climate will exacerbate and create problems for us.
Very well. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, let me thank you both for your time speaking there to Desmond De Sar, South Durban Community Environmental Alliance, as well as Professor Patrick Bond from the University of Johannesburg School of Government. Thank you for your time.